What do you perceive that we have done and helped you with?
So my initial view of how I needed to take my message to market wasn't working. And in conversation with you, what I found was that I wasn't approaching it from a strategic point of view, in that the messaging to market needed to be very clear. I need to be absolutely clear on what was the value proposition, what was I articulating, what was I selling, what were the problems that I was solving. And two things for me that came out of there that were most profound. One was the content carousel, because I'd been brought up in the schools through my entrepreneurial learning of what they call the ascending transaction model. You know, the lead magnet, you start with something free and you gradually work your way up to a higher cost item. And that wasn't working so well for me. And then I had a situation where the content carousel, the way that you explained having something as a core offering, and around that then came a whole orbit of other things, whether it was a PDF or white paper, some free content, a video, and that people would orbit that until they were ready. Actually made sense to me because it's how I orbited you. I was aware of content that you were putting out there, and you were really following your own content management path of that content carousel. So that made a lot of sense to me. And then as we built that out, what that might look like, and I started to execute that, I started to change my messaging to market. I started to get more recognized. I then engaged someone from a LinkedIn point of view who helped me better target my clients on LinkedIn. And then coupled with that, we had the conversation around the format. And that for me changed everything as well, because all my keynotes, my presentations, the workshops that I did, any piece of writing that I did, the stuff I put on my website, you know, I created a format mind map template. And any time I put together a piece of content, a presentation especially, I would do the mind map first in that format. And then I would execute the presentation from there. And in fact, I remember once thinking presentations used to take me a week to put together because I didn't really have a clear structure. And so I think I put something out into a PowerPoint presentation, would take me time to get it out there, and I'd look at it and be happy with it. And I'd cut and shut it multiple times and revise it multiple times. And even then I wasn't happy with the final outcome. Once I started using the format, I developed the whole mind map. I would see the flow of information. I'd see that I touched all the bases that I need to touch. And then the first time that I did that, it took me less than a day to put the entire PowerPoint deck of like 60 slides together. And I was blown away by the difference in approach. And then when I delivered that keynote, the feedback from it was outstanding.
That's a pretty good result. Okay. How long would it have taken you before that to put something like 60 slides together?
A week at least. And then it would have been a lot of time and energy, a lot of frustration because it wasn't flowing. And I wouldn't have been happy with the result at the end anyway, but then I'd run out of time and I'd have to deliver it. And it was always done in that sort of fashion without really spending the time up front to do the planning. As Abraham Lincoln said, you know, give me 4 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend 3 hours sharpening the saw or the axe. And I realised it was much better for me to do the planning in a structured way using that format to understand what was the message I was trying to get across. Why would you do it? What would you do? How would you do it? What if you did or you didn't? And that's now become my mantra about how I approach all my keynotes and workshops and pretty well anything that I put together.
Okay. No, that's a great result. Thank you for that. So beyond that, sorry?
And I've shared it with others.
Good. So you should.
Well, one of the funniest things was I was presenting to the SIRF Surf Roundtable group in Queensland in October 2018 when I was engaged with you. And a guy got up before me, and it was a pretty poor presentation. The guy before me, a guy called Mark Hocknell, who I've since done some work with, he got up and he said, I've just had to rejig my presentation because I've been told I have to follow the format. And I got up straight after him and I said, hey Mark, you'll be pleased to know, mine does. And I got the best reviews of anyone in the whole conference as delivering one of the best keynotes. So,
great. No, that's an excellent result. No, I'm very pleased. Okay. So what else did you get out of working with us?
Clarity of message. I'm realizing, I realized at the time that I wasn't really clear about who my target market was, what was the message I was trying to get across, what was the problems that I was solving. And, you don't go through this process and suddenly it all works out like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but you start to formulate and clarify what it is you're trying to achieve, what are the problems you're trying to solve out in the marketplace. And I think I've recut my LinkedIn personal profile 3 or 4 times in 18 months, because it is a constant process of refinement. The market changes, my awareness of what the market needs changes, and so it's not also something that you can just set and forget.
So on a more personal note, what would you think our strengths are? How would you characterize us?
No bullshit approach would be the way that I would put it. I think you and Barbara make a great team. If you're the sledgehammer, she's the cushion.
I would have thought it was the other way around, actually.
Maybe she delivers it with a bit more feminine edge. But I like the accountability that you guys created for me. That every week there was a catch up. There was stuff I had to do, and I work best when I'm accountable to someone. Because I find that when I'm not, it's easy to get lazy. And I'm sure you experience this.
We all do. We all do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Accountability to someone, especially when you're paying them for their service. Accountability to someone in that way for me is some skin in the game and obviously part of the value exchange. But it also makes sure that providing there's a plan to execute, being held accountable for the steps in that plan really helped me.
Skill set wise, what would you say our greatest skill sets are? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but
I'd say it's the ability to think laterally. I think your mastermind training and experience that you have, and taking me on a bit of a journey to help me explore things that I perhaps wouldn't have explored before through some sort of lateral thinking. The best question you ever asked me, which didn't lead to an engagement, but it led me to think much bigger than I had before, was, what do you think is impossible now that if it wasn't would change everything?
Okay, interesting.
And I did, and I articulated very quickly what that was, and then I set me on a path for about the next 9 months to step up the food chain within a business. And I got to the executive general manager of that company. It didn't lead to any work, but it built a relationship. Almost got to the MD, which was my plan, but he ended up retiring early. So there was almost, it was a 50-50 chance that I'd actually get to the MD of that organisation. So that for me was a really profound question, because I think when we're in our own businesses, we sometimes put limitations and barriers up that actually aren't there.
Yeah, I think they are. And I think very often we underestimate our own ability.
Yes.
So here's another question. Have you ever used any other coaches?
Not for marketing specifically, but I've obviously been part of the KPI, Key Person of Influence group, which is an accountability group where my book came out of. And I was obviously part of the Kerwin Ray K2 Elite Network for about 3.5 years, which is a very strong peer accountability framework, which helped me enormously move, through various parts of my business. But also that was a very good educational framework, because there was constant skills development around social media, around content and all that sort of stuff. So
if you looked at what Kerwin Ray and his cohort does and what, say, Barbara and I do, what would you say the difference is, if any?
Oh, yours is one-on-one.
Okay, and that makes a difference. Why?
It makes a difference for me because I think one of the things I've noticed for people that have moved away from those peer accountability models, I'll use my words carefully, is that as those groups tend to grow, there tends to be more reliance on you to help you than the people who founded the group to help you. So when that happens, it can sometimes lead to people feeling that they didn't get what they paid for. Whereas with you guys, it was always one-on-one. It was me sitting with you, having a conversation like this, or even in person, because they're both in Sydney, which was handy. And those levels of conversation for me helped me feel more connected with you, and certainly helped me feel that I was getting value.
Okay, so if I was to ask how we could provide more value, what would that be? Is there something that was missing that maybe if we, I'm looking for ways we could improve.
I can't think of any, to be honest, because at the time I felt that the way that you approached me, although my business, isn't unique, and I'm sure you see that businesses of all sizes have very similar problems, leadership, culture, team development, systems, processes, standards, all that sort of stuff. I still felt that what you created for me was customized for my particular set of problems and the way that I needed to market myself out to the broader market.
Okay.
So I don't think I don't think you could improve that through any sort of systematization at all, because I felt that what you offered was custom built for me effectively, but it was almost like you've got this toolbox, Lego blocks, and you can call on those Lego blocks and you can configure that and put it together for each individual business's needs.